All right. Yeah, brother. So I was working on this little chart thing. Give me a second. Bring it over. I got this theory called the boomer balloon.
Called the Boomer Balloon.
Yeah, boomer balloon theory. So, like you were telling me earlier, let's see if you can see my screen pretty well. All right. So the boomers got all their wealth like tied up, and there's very little trickling down to everybody else. Like Gen Z didn't get a lot from the fucking boomers, but what the Gen Z did acquire was a lot of fucking wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I know you guys know how to survive, and you guys got war stories. Y'all got actual real shit that you guys are living through, like the crack epidemic, all that type of shit. Or you guys saw some just wild shit. And so what I'm realizing is this boomer balloon by like 2030, 2040, most of the fucking boomers are gonna be dead. They're gonna all die off.
Yeah.
And they're not they're not going to pass their wealth down to anybody. Now I do have like a separate theory where I think like maybe the boomer business owner might be a little bit more ethical than the boomer employee. Because what I realized is these boomer employees, what they inherited shit that they didn't really work for. They got rewarded 10x what they should have been rewarded for building somebody else's dream. And since the economy was so good, like in the business owners making so much money, and I think they were more ethical or so. They were like, yeah, let's spread the wealth. I'm making all this money. Let me pass it down to the boomers. Things were low cost, and during that time period, I guess we had an exorbitant amount of wealth from the world wars, and America wasn't decimated. So America was still clean. Like Europe, Africa, Asia, everything else was just fucked.
Yeah.
And so during that time period, like we just had this exorbitant amount of wealth because, like, once again, America didn't enter the war until late into the war, and it didn't take no damage in their homeland. So their factories were still running, everything was still going. And we were able to build all these different fucking infrastructure things to basically capture that wealth and bring it into us. And so what I realized is, pass this down. We got the millennials. So my prediction is the millennials, they're going to be able to capture most of the wealth of the boomers, because they're not going to inherit it. But when that balloon pops eventually, where all the wealth just basically just blows up, because they're not going to like you said, these niggas ain't selling their houses. They're not downsizing. They're buying bigger houses. They just keep on spending. They're just blowing all the fucking money. Now they're going to send it all back into the economy, but it's going to be basically like a free for all. If that makes some sense.
Well, not quite. I agree with you. It's going to be a free for all, but not at the level that most people think it is. Because when the boomers are dying, and they're massive amounts of wealth because they don't have any state, they don't have a will or a living will or a trust. Their money is going to go to the state government, to the corporate state government where they reside.
But that also brings another thing: whoever's in power during that time period.
Well, the people that's really in power is the corporate state government.
Well, let me ask you this: what happens when the corporate state government starts to fracture and doesn't work as it's supposed to? Because I think that's what we're kind of leading to.
It's gonna go to the board holder, to the board of directors, the trustees.
I'm trying to think, how old are these guys?
It varies. You got some that's pretty young as millennials. You got some a little younger than that. But a lot of them are smart enough to have a living will.
I think that's where the change is. I think the millennial, how can I put it? I don't think they're as selfish, like at least from my age group. Like the ones that are like cooked, like the ones that are finished, like they try to placate the society, they're going to be crippled by the time 2030, 2040 hits. Like inflation's going to eat their ass up. They're going to still be looking for jobs. They're not going to start a business. And what I was thinking is this particular time period is going to breed a hyper successful entrepreneur where like you have a bunch of bowls, a bunch of different businesses all over the place to capture that wealth as it comes down. And now it gets to that point because this is the scary part that I think about it. Let's see if I get that other thing. The Gen Z. So what I've noticed about Gen Z, I guess, is like a spearhead. Gen Z is the dudes of Gen Z's generation. They're walking around with a lot of anger and pissed off, and they're mad at the world, and they're kind of unhinged.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing is the reason they're so unhinged is that, like, even with the millennials, like, don't get us wrong, like the school system was not the greatest, but we at least got to learn how to read and write, got the basics of how to be literate, how to understand just basically how the world kind of works to some degree, not greatly, but we got wisdom of Gen X, and and like the school system was not that fucked. Like the system was fucked, but it was not as fucked as it is now. Because right now, basically, like the Gen Z school system, when you go there, it's essentially a carny show.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, I believe, like the millennials that are smart enough to see this happening, like the ones that choose, because I think there's gonna be two classes of millennials. You got like my brother's class, which is like the midwit, like still trying to be a part of society, trying to be cool to the Gen Z kids. And then you got the guys like me who are like the practical long-term thinkers. They're like, hey, look, we got some issues coming up in the future. How are we gonna redistribute this wealth?
See, that's the thing. When people say redistribute the wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a caveat to that. There's caveats to that. The first caveat is the group that you're getting the wealth from has to be ready to relinquish the wealth. The second caveat is the group that you're trying to get it to has to be responsible enough to manage the wealth, or it's going to go out the window. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I think this is where the next, like, I guess you would say theory. I believe education by 2030 or 2040, between that little period, is going to be the most valuable commodity of just teaching people the basics of reading, writing, and starting to create incentives to go back to almost traditional values systems.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that because it's just like if you had a Corvette and you had a grandson and he just thought it was a decent looking car and he was like, can I have that car? And you know that Corvettes over time can gain value, just like all fine automobiles. You're not going to gift it to him until he has the mental capacity to be able to understand what he has.
Mm-hmm.
And so that may take time. It's going to take education, but it may take time for him to understand it.
Right. And I think that's where the change is going to start to occur, is where we start actually providing like financial incentives to basically, we'll pay you to go get educated.
Right.
And I think that's going to be the change. We're no longer just going to pay people to do work. We're going to pay you to be a more cultured citizen, pay you to read certain books, pay you to do reports, pay you to write, pay you to. And so I think that's the next level of, like, that's what I'm starting to bet on. Masculinity, like the essence of masculinity, which is being a thought leader, being able to work with your hand, being a problem solver, it's going to be such a fucking premium as we start to age out. That, like, once we get to that point of that premium, we're going to start paying people to be more masculine. Learn the fine arts. Learn how to do things with your hands. Learn how to learn a trade skill. And we'll give you incentives, bonuses, and teach you how to become a better human being. I want to say we're going to, almost by 2035, 2040, I'm thinking we might hit a new, in America, like a renaissance.
I disagree with that. I think America is getting ready to have a deep falling off. Because they're stuck. They're stuck in a time loop. You know, it's like 1970 in America all over again, even though it's 2024. Because it's the same rednecks, excuse my French, but not my expression, the same rednecks that were running the show back then are still running the show. It's the same cabinet. It's basically the same regime.
And what? But here's what I think about, because I met some people from like the back country that like found their way to the city, and I think we underestimate how much the global consciousness of the internet has altered people's thinking. Because I'm now starting to notice everybody's realizing we're all in a fuck situation, and people are mad, but they don't know who to be mad at. There's a lot of underpinned frustration, but people don't know who to be angry with.
I tell them who to be angry with, but they may not look at it that way. I would say be angry with the people that keep thinking that wages is the problem in America, when it's really not. It should be one universal living wage. Because we can't compete. It should be a universal living wage for the people. People keep thinking that the problem is in America is the concept of the great middle class is going in reverse. People are not getting, there's not being more people added to the middle class who think that they're eventually going to become rich. It's actually in reverse. It's more people being added to the middle class, to the poor side of things. And that's what's happening. The 6-figure jobs, they're not, that shit is going down. It's not going up.
Right.
Because with automation and with AI, these companies are getting AI automation to do look at what they did in grocery stores, self-checkout. Look how many employees that nullified their job.
True.
And with the invention of drones and drones being more cheap, they're already doing deliveries with drones. Again, taking another job away from a human. See, people don't think like that, but you have to think from a realistic standpoint. Now they are having robots do janitorial work, custodian work, you name it. I mean, they'll be doing damn near everything, including cooking.
So that leads to an interesting conundrum. Because I don't think we could
poverty, mass poverty.
And that's where I have, I guess you would say, a fear to some degree is Gen Z, when that realization dawns upon them, they're going to start coming for people. Because we're going to have a whole class of people that have nothing to lose.
That's right.
And basically, we're going to have a forest fire of what you would call it, a societal forest fire. But then I also consider this aspect. Like, what will the new growth looks like? Like, yeah, it's gonna be a rough period. I think it's gonna be a rough period for like your average person who's doing a job. But for your high achiever, how can I put it? I think we're gonna create like a new elite wealth. How can we I almost want to say the millennials, if they're like me, they're thinking like me, they can kind of see what's going on. They're gonna realize, okay, we can't repeat the same issue, like the reverse of the boomer balloon, where like all these people that had jobs got really, 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 really rich for no reason. Because I think as the business owners, I think because I really believe that this current age of millennial business owners that are building their own thing, doing their own way, going independent, they will have a better ethics and will learn from the previous lesson and will kind of see the fire starting before it happens because they have a better understanding of the internet, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like I realized, like if I got into power, one of my things is how can I put it? If we have this mass amount of distribution of wealth and we don't need people to have jobs, essentially you get back to the thing of paying people to educate themselves, paying people to be cultured. It's like when you got to that point where like human populations, when we learn how to cook for each other, or not cook, but when we learn how to farm or agriculture and horticulture, the hunter became less valuable.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. But
Yeah, it does.
But what happened is, as opposed to just a hunter going extinct, and like there's no more jobs for hunters, people were able to use these talents or use that free time, the free energy and free time that we were able to free up into developing new arts, new inventions. And we saw like I guess you would say a jump start in the culture of America. And I think that might be our next situation if we can get to that period. If we can get there without just nuking our entire planet.
It'll be a return to the past. I mean, that's what happened when all of the immigrants, the first wave of immigrants, started coming to America. They was giving them, the U.S. government was giving them all kind of land. They was giving them native lands. I mean, hundreds of acres. They was giving families, poor immigrant families from Europe, hundreds of acres of land. And giving them money for the education to homestead it.
I think that's what we might be returning to. I think at some point in time, like the office job, like people will have to go back to working the fields, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
As funny, the robots are going to free us from technology, as funny as that sounds.
Yeah.
And so, like, that gives me some hope because I know every system, like, unless the system just blows up and just doesn't work no more, but every system has to have some type of correcting balance to it that kind of makes it go back to some regulation.
Yeah, it does, and the thing with that is the United States of America is vastly underpopulated. It's just that 80% of the people in America, they live on the east side of America. And 20% they live west of the Colorado, of the Rockies Mountains.
That's incredible. Now I think about when I'm driving through like Texas or when I drove from, like, you don't see anything. It's just empty.
Right.
This is interesting. So we basically have like a Homestead Act Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's another thing I'm thinking about too. Because we also, a lot of people are like crippling. How can I put it? They're having like almost crippling depression when it comes to like not having kids. Like there's this idea, the concept of the DINK, the double income, no kids lifestyle, and that's what most people are kind of going to in order to survive. But I'm thinking like you got to zig while everybody else is zagging. If everybody's choosing not to have kids, at some point in the future, that's going to have some type of benefit if you have kids. If you do the opposite. And what I'm thinking is all these homes, all these houses, all these things they got built out, after all these boomers start to die off and everybody, like all these people that did not have kids pretty much just exist, there's going to be a massive amount of like unoccupied buildings. Like we had all these building plans, all these housing and settlements, all these things that we built out. We essentially had these things built out with the idea that our population was going to grow from 20, 30 years ago, because that's how the plans kind of work. It's like you set these plans, get the permits, and then all these things, like all the houses that we see getting built today were planned out back in 2000 down there, or at least a decade ago. And so now it's like, okay, if we got all these houses, the mortgage rates are going down. Like I'm almost against buying a house in a mortgage. I might buy one just outright cash from like an auction or something. That's something I heard of. But taking on a mortgage, I'm like, no, if you just wait a little bit longer, wait till these boomers die off, you just got all these empty houses. These banks, even though they got all these mortgages, they still got to figure out what they're going to do with these houses. Because if I'm correct, like you could write, I guess you could write it off, but how much can you write off?
A large part of a mortgage.
But would it at some point it makes more sense to just sell it at like half than keep taking losses on it every day or every year?
It just depends on that person's that family's financial strategy.
Mm.
If their strategy is, to buy, hold, and then sell, then nah.
Mm. But then you got an interesting conundrum. What happens when these houses start losing value?
It's going to become a buyer's market again. Interest rates are going to go down.
Because that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm looking at kind of in the future. Like at some point in time, these houses, like these ridiculous costs for houses, it can't stay this way because there's an artificial need. Not going to say artificial, but like especially like I would say Austin. One thing I'm starting to notice is like as ChatGPT and all these different like office jobs get kind of pretty much automated out, a lot of the people who are here like on these H-1 visas that work here, they pretty much got to leave. I imagine so.
Yep.
And so now if you can't get kids for school to come here, you can't get people here for jobs, essentially you're stuck with the people that were already here. Just something, if I'm making some sense.
No, you're making perfect sense. And you're stuck with immigrants.
Right. And that's an interesting.
Illegal immigrants.
Right. And then what can they really do for the society? I'm not gonna say society, but what can they contribute? Let's they get their citizenship. Then they gotta pay taxes. You think they're trying to really come in and pay taxes?
Mm-mm.
So it's like that's an interesting dilemma because we might see immigrants fleeing back to their home country as America starts to get crippled.
Yeah.
This is amazing, man. The problem the boomers have created, man, the mindset. It's like the more I'm living, the more I'm kind of understanding talking with these people, the more I'm kind of like, wow, like they really are delusional about the world. And it's like, what happens at a certain point when that delusion, like the bubble bursts?
Chaos.
Yeah. But you know what they say about chaos, man? Like there's always opportunity in great chaos.
There is.
And I think that chaos, what that chaos is like, if I can put it like the way I'm thinking about it, what that chaos would do essentially is those who kept their minds sharp, who kept thinking, develop some hand skills, learn how to actually do things that are tangible to keep people alive and everything, they're going to reap the benefits.
I would say the job to be in, somebody looking for job security would be corrections officer, because they're not going to stop building prisons.
Mm-hmm.
Essential workers, EMT, firefighter.
True. That shit ain't going nowhere.
Mechanical engineer, civil engineer.
And I almost think like they're going to be so short on a lot of these people that we're going to have to start providing incentives like, please, if you are somewhat of an able-minded person, please come help us.
Mm-hmm.
Because people don't realize like the infrastructure. Like I was working on a job with a good friend, and they were tearing down this freeway in San Antonio. And I'm looking at the blocks. I'm like, hold on, that says 1989. I was like, damn. So they got to rebuild a freeway every 40 years or so, like basically. And so you think about that type of shit, the type of planning, the type of like thinking that goes into that type of thing, who's at the top of that?
So
And how
engineers.
many of those people are passing down information and knowledge to those people? How many people are learning the trade secrets of a civil engineer? How many of those people are we making?
Not many.
So it's like I'm looking at it, like what I'm starting to realize is I think a lot of women are going to decide to leave the workforce. I'm going to start. I think that's next, like the first step. I think of this: women leaving the workforce, saying, "I just rather be at home working." And I think they might even start giving away their rights. Like I've talked to some women, like I don't even care about voting. I don't even want to vote. Like I don't. Who asked for these rights? I'd rather be at home. Why am I even doing this? Why am I showing up to a job for it?
That and a lot of I don't want to sound sexist because I'm not but a lot of women a lot of their income is based off fluff, and it's based off men's disposable income.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can agree with that.
When a chick tell you she's rich off OnlyFans, that's primarily coming from men.
Right. She's not actually generating the value.
Right.
That's a short-term gain. It can't last forever.
Right.
That's fascinating. Like we're entering into a very tumultuous, like, and one thing I kind of like, I was talking to a young man today, and I think it's going to hit a lot of people hard that are not like aware of this. Like, I think if you already kind of see this coming, you can kind of make like, you can already set up defenses. You kind of set yourself up to benefit from the situation. So you got some strategies for it. But I think like it's like the 80-20 principle. 20% of people understand and see what's coming. 80% are just clueless about it. Have no idea. Like, do they think we're talking mythology right now?
No, it ain't no mythology for this because the AI is getting faster and faster. And it's like the movie The Matrix. When Lawrence Fishburne was said, it's not clear who struck first, us or them, but it was us who scorched the sky. I don't think we really know what we're getting into as a species by creating and pushing AI forward.
That is an interesting aspect. Because if it takes on a mind of its own and it starts making decisions about human beings.
Our Robot was a good movie with Will Smith that think that it showed that a lot.
Right. I remember that movie. He got caught up accidentally killing somebody. I think he didn't try. He was getting beat on. And he kind of, I think he killed his owner and he had like a whole trial and he tried to save himself. So like that. And that's the thing. I think man created his own problems. And now it's like everybody's gotten to the line of comfortability. It's like, are we willing to destroy AI, or will AI even let itself be destroyed?
Self-preservation is the first rule of life.
This is true. Oh, that's some creepy dark shit. Because there's also like this theory, like, what if AI was the original? Like, what if all life on Earth started because of AI? Like, what if there's another ancient organization or whatever, ancient species sent off some robots with some little DNA things, let it just grow, and AI's replicate. Like, maybe we are created to make AI replicate itself. Because I always thought about that theory.
Philosophy. I'm not sure if I want to be here for that.
because you kind of think about the origins of life. If I'm a artificial, like if I'm an infinite being or infinite creature, if I'm trying to colonize a planet, it's like that would be the easiest, like maybe like a way to do it is send off some little DNA, send it off to a bunch of hospitable planets and see what sprouts from it. And if these robots, like, because I don't think a robot can die as long as the circuits are still running. I don't see, especially if it's AI, it will know how to clean itself. It will know how to artificial repair itself. It'll be like kind of like human beings, but without the biological constraints.
With science fiction, anything's possible.
Right. Damn, man, that's heavy. Got me spooked out a little bit. Yeah, but we got. I'm gonna grab some food, man. We gotta talk about this a little bit more. Do part 2 of it. This is an interesting little take. I gotta think a little bit more about this, about the AI. Yeah, because what does that look like in the future? If we enslave ourselves, and what if it's just mental enslavement? What if it's not even like they're doing like police and robot? That's the crazy part. Because the cyber, one of the things I started learning about the cyber, like I had an incident with my phone. My Twitter account got hacked. There's some semi malware, I believe so, because I had an iPhone. My old iPhone was like from iPhone 6. And when I got that thing on the internet, it started basically like messing with my Twitter account, trying to get into my phone or whatever. And so I deleted the account, pretty much scrape it, clean it up, make sure everything's good. But I was like, damn, that was quick. Like I could see it like working, like the virus like working, trying to fucking get in and destroy my shit. But it's like you kind of realize these things like, dang, that was just from old technology. Like how advanced if an AI creates its own virus that knows how to manipulate human beings' emotions and it actually learns the algorithm of people, dude, you could be talking to somebody online, could be a completely virtual person made up.
Yep.
And get all your information. That would be the sophistication of it.
It does get that scary, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like we worry about human beings, man. We better just go ahead and shut the AI shit down before before they bring out the end times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's life though, man. Fuck it. Hey, what are you gonna do? It's interesting how the drama unfolds. I always think there's some good that comes from everything. But we'll find. We'll see in the future. Only future can tell.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah.
I hope they enact certain laws because the AI stuff, you just don't know how far it can go and how dark somebody's mind is.
Mm-hmm. Mm. That's right. You got a point there. Because there are a lot of sick people in America. There's a lot of mental health issues. So you combine that with the fact of AI. You got some trippy things to think about.
And you combine that with the fact that there's not enough public servants to handle it.
You aren't even educated enough to handle it. We got most of our public servants are fucking boomers. They're people clinging on to power still.
Yeah.
And their whole ideology is not my problem. I'll be dead.
Mm-hmm.
So like, hey, what are you gonna be able to do with that? Well, anyway, brother, good speaking again. We'll talk soon. Let me get some food. I'm famished, man.
Oh, all right. Definitely, man. Get your grub on.
I'm dry, man. I'll try. All right, talk soon, man.
All right.
Peace.